He made the world laugh, but behind the camera, his greatest role was yet to be seen. For decades, Robin Williams appeared to be a man entirely made of light, a blazing comet of energy that dazzled everyone who witnessed him. Audiences fell in love with his wild brilliance, his ability to shift from roaring laughter to piercing vulnerability in a heartbeat. To watch Robin perform was to see something otherworldly, as if the universe had sent him here to teach us how to feel more deeply. Every word, every gesture, every character he embodied felt alive because Robin never pretended. He became, whether he was an alien bewildered by Earth, a teacher inspiring his students to seize the day, a genie bursting with humor, or a father in disguise yearning for his children, he gave each role a piece of his soul. Yet beyond the camera, away from the stage, few understood just how heavy that soul truly was. It was easy to believe that his magic was endless, that laughter flowed from him like water from a spring. But those closest to him began to notice something more, something beneath the humor. Sally Field was among them. What she saw wasn't just an actor at the height of his powers, but a man searching, always searching. His quick wit and endless voices masked a restlessness, a hunger to connect not only with his audience, but with those around him in quiet and profound ways. He could make you laugh until your ribs ached, but in the silence between takes, you felt his empathy like a soft hand on your shoulder. He could look at someone, really look, and know if they were carrying something heavy. This was the Robin Williams that Sally Field came to know during the filming of Mrs. Doubtfire. At first, she assumed he was like everyone else in Hollywood, charming, quick, and inevitably distant once the lights went out. But what unfolded during those long months revealed the truth about Robin, a truth that many would never see. He wasn't performing kindness to maintain an image. His goodness was unshakable, his compassion instinctive. And then came that quiet, life-changing moment, the day when Sally's world fell apart, the day when Robin stopped being her co-star and became something else entirely. In that instant, he showed her what no award, no standing ovation could ever capture, his humanity. It was this humanity, not his comedy, that defined him. But before we reach that moment of quiet heroism, we must first understand how their unlikely friendship blossomed. In the eye of Robin's storm, Sally found an anchor and he hers. From the moment they met, it was impossible not to notice how completely opposite Robin Williams and Sally Field appeared to be. He was a whirlwind, spinning through sets with irresistible energy, unpredictable yet magnetic. His humor came in torrents, his mind firing faster than anyone could follow, leaving laughter in his wake like sparks from a fire. Sally, on the other hand, carried herself with a quiet calm. Her movements were measured, her words deliberate, her presence serene, even amid the chaos of a busy set. To the casual observer, they seemed to inhabit different worlds. Yet somehow, when they shared a scene, those differences didn't clash. They harmonized. On Mrs. Doubtfire, that harmony became something even more profound. From their very first read-through, there was a spark between them. Not just the kind you see in two great actors working together, but something warmer, more honest. Their chemistry on screen wasn't manufactured. It was a reflection of what was happening off-camera, too. Robin's boundless improvisation might have overwhelmed others, but Sally didn't flinch. Instead, she responded in kind, not with wildness, but with steadiness. Her calm allowed him to fly higher, and his brilliance illuminated her subtle strength. Together, they didn't just act, they connected. It wasn't long before their conversations between takes began to stray from scripts and scenes into something deeper. While crew members adjusted lights and cameras, Robin and Sally would stand off to the side, talking not about Hollywood, not about fame, but about family, about heartbreak, about loss, the kinds of fears and hopes that most people kept hidden in a town like theirs. Robin spoke candidly about his insecurities despite his success, and Sally revealed her own quiet battles. These exchanges built something rare between them, trust. What truly struck Sally was Robin's ability to see everyone. He didn't just notice her, he noticed everyone. From the lead actor to the stagehand holding a boom mic, from the director to the intern quietly shadowing behind the monitors, Robin made each person feel like they mattered. He knew their names, asked how their day was going, and genuinely listened to the answer. While others focused on the scene ahead or their own lines, Robin's gaze swept the room, seeking out anyone who looked tired, sad, or forgotten. It was in these moments, watching him step away from the spotlight to comfort someone in the shadows, that Sally began to see that his brilliance wasn't confined to his comedy. It radiated through his compassion. He didn't just perform kindness for applause. He lived it. And though she thought she understood him then, she had only scratched the surface of who Robin truly was. But the depth of his care would only become clear when tragedy struck. Just before the cameras rolled, a quiet devastation arrived. On what should have been just another long day of filming, the news came like a knife through the calm. Sally Field received the call she had feared but could never have prepared for. Her father had suffered a massive stroke. Before she could even process those words, the next blow landed. He was gone. In the hollow silence that followed, the bustle of the set seemed to fade away, and the weight of her grief pressed down, heavy and suffocating. Yet, even in that moment of loss, she made the choice so many in her position felt forced to make. She steadied herself, swallowed the rising tide of pain, and prepared to walk back onto set, determined not to let her personal tragedy disrupt the work at hand. But Robin Williams saw through it all. Without a word from Sally, without any outward sign other than the quiet trembling in her eyes, he knew. There was no performance convincing enough to fool him, not when it came to pain. His gaze caught hers just as she began moving toward her mark, and something shifted in his expression. It wasn't pity, it was resolve. Before she could take another step, Robin moved. The man who moments earlier had been the source of laughter and chaos suddenly became something else entirely, a calm, commanding presence who brought the entire production to a halt. In a voice that carried both authority and tenderness, he simply said, "No, not today. Not like this." He walked straight to director Chris Columbus, his tone leaving no room for debate, and told him plainly, Sally was going home. The shoot was over. There was no discussion, no argument. Chris glanced at Sally, saw the truth in her face, and nodded. Robin had spoken for her, and in that moment, no one dared to challenge him. The unstoppable machine of Hollywood, the schedules, the deadlines, the money, it all stopped. And all because one man decided that her grief was more important than any scene. That quiet defiance revealed something about Robin that words could never fully capture. This wasn't an act for show or a gesture meant to be witnessed. This was instinct. When the world expected her to push through, he stood in her way, shielding her from the weight of expectation. His presence was both fierce and gentle, the rare combination that only he could embody. That single act of defiance against Hollywood's relentless pace revealed more than words ever could. Sometimes the loudest statement is silence. When the weight of grief finally broke through Sally's composure, she expected Robin to meet it with his usual arsenal of wit, stories, and laughter. After all, wasn't that what he did best? But instead, he did something far more powerful. He simply sat beside her, quiet, present, unshaken. No nervous chatter to fill the void. No forced humor to distract her from her pain. He just stayed there, his silence steady and unflinching, letting her feel everything she needed to feel without judgment, without interruption. That silence, she would later say, spoke louder than any words could have. It was in that stillness that Sally truly understood the depth of Robin's strength. There was a wisdom in his restraint, a quiet mastery of knowing when to act and when simply to be. While others fidgeted uncomfortably, trying to find the right words, Robin already knew there were none. He knew that what she needed in that moment was not someone to fix her grief, but someone strong enough to stand with her inside it. That balance between stepping forward and holding back was something few people possessed, and it left her in awe. That moment remained with Sally for the rest of her career, more vivid than any scene she ever filmed. Of all the awards and accolades, it was that quiet gesture of empathy that etched itself into her memory as the most profound. In a place where everything was loud and fast and superficial, Robin's stillness was a revelation. The crew felt it, too. People who had worked on dozens of sets, who thought they'd seen it all, were moved by the shift in the air. They watched as Robin, with nothing more than a quiet presence, transformed the energy of the room. What had been a frenzied, tense atmosphere became calm. People moved slower, voices softened. It was as though his quiet dignity gave everyone permission to breathe, to simply be human for a moment. And this was Robin's gift, hidden in plain sight. His kindness wasn't about grand gestures or public displays. It lived in the quiet spaces, pulling a tired assistant aside to ask if they were okay, cracking a small private joke to lighten the load of a weary crew member, remembering everyone's names. These unnoticed acts of care were the foundation of his brilliance, and they resonated long after the cameras stopped rolling. And yet, while he carried everyone else's pain, few realized the shadows growing within him. Even as he lifted others, Robin was quietly sinking. 4 years, Robin Williams had carried everyone else's pain like it was his duty, lightening their burdens with his humor, soothing their hearts with his presence. But while the world saw the lightning, it failed to see the storm gathering inside him. The very man who made millions laugh was beginning to doubt his own ability to bring joy. It started subtly at first, moments when his energy faltered, when the spark in his eyes dimmed just a little too long. But soon the cracks became harder to hide. Beneath the layers of charm and wit, depression began to take root, whispering doubts that even his boundless genius couldn't silence. His career, which had once seemed unstoppable, began to lose momentum. Scripts grew fewer, the applause quieter. When The Crazy Ones, his long-awaited return to television, was abruptly cancelled, the blow struck deeper than anyone realized. He masked the hurt with self-deprecating jokes, but the failure gnawed at him privately, feeding a creeping sense of irrelevance. And then came the collapse of his second marriage, a rupture that left him feeling unmoored and increasingly isolated. The laughter he shared with others became a shield, but behind closed doors, the silence grew heavier. Friends who caught glimpses of his sadness would later admit they never understood just how deep it ran. For Robin, vulnerability was dangerous, even to those closest to him. But nothing shook him more than the diagnosis. When doctors told him he had Parkinson's disease, the words landed like a sentence, cruel and final. To a man whose entire being depended on motion, spontaneity, and sharpness of mind, the thought of losing those gifts was unbearable. Yet even then, he kept it mostly to himself, trying to absorb the news without showing how it hollowed him out inside. Behind his bright eyes, behind the laughter and the stories, Robin was fighting battles invisible to the rest of the world. He continued to show up, to perform, to make others feel better, but each smile was a little heavier, each joke a little slower. In the quiet, when no one was watching, he was a man unraveling in silence. What he and the world didn't yet know was the true nature of his torment. What no one saw coming was far more cruel than anyone imagined. When the world woke to the news that Robin Williams was gone, shock swept through every corner of the globe. People wept, stunned that the man who had given them so much light could have been consumed by such darkness. At first, everyone believed the story they were told, that depression and Parkinson's disease had driven him to despair. But the real truth, uncovered only after his death, revealed a far more vicious enemy than anyone had suspected. Doctors discovered that Robin had been living with Lewy body dementia, a relentless and devastating brain disorder that mimics the symptoms of Parkinson's, Alzheimer's, and severe depression all at once. This silent invader had been attacking him from within, stealing his clarity, warping his memory, distorting his very sense of self. It was a disease so cruel it left him trapped between reality and illusion, fully aware at times of what he was losing, yet powerless to stop it. Friends and family, even those closest to him, never knew. He carried it alone, determined not to burden the people he loved. Robin wore his smile like armor, shielding others from the chaos inside his mind. He fought through the confusion and the fear, performing even as he felt himself unraveling, choosing to protect everyone but himself. His resilience during those final months was nothing short of extraordinary. While his body betrayed him and his mind faltered, he continued showing up, continued trying to lift others. It was only later that his loved ones began to see the full scope of his suffering and just how masterfully he had hidden it. For Sally Field, the revelation was heartbreaking, but also illuminating. So many of the moments she remembered, the slight hesitation in his eyes, the quiet fatigue after a take, suddenly made sense. This wasn't just a man battling sadness or doubt. He was fighting a war within his own body, a war he had no chance of winning, yet never let anyone see him surrender to. Yet even as his own world crumbled, he never stopped being there for others. Long after the laughter faded, his humanity remained. Even after all the chaos, all the heartbreak, what endured about Robin Williams was not merely his brilliance as a performer, but his quiet, almost invisible kindness that touched everyone who crossed his path. On set, his gestures became legendary not because they were loud or grand, but because they were real. He remembered the names of everyone, not just the stars, but the camera operators, the caterers, the assistants too nervous to speak. He'd take the time to ask how they were, look them in the eyes, and actually listen. For someone whose own mind was waging a private war, his ability to see everyone else so clearly was nothing short of extraordinary. For Sally, that duality, how he could be electric yet safe, remains impossible to forget. Electric because his energy lit up every space he walked into, unpredictable and alive. Yet safe because you could trust him with your rawest truths, knowing he would never misuse them. He never mocked vulnerability, he protected it. That combination was rare, almost impossible, and yet Robin carried it with ease. His empathy transcended Hollywood, bleeding into every life he touched. People who met him for only a moment still spoke of the warmth he left behind. He would crack a joke to ease your nerves but follow it with a quiet word that cut straight to your heart. He knew how to make you feel like you mattered, even when the world convinced you otherwise. Stories from the Mrs. Doubtfire crew paint a portrait of a man who worked just as hard to lift spirits off camera as he did when the director called action. When a young assistant showed up late one morning, flustered and terrified she'd be fired, Robin made her laugh so hard she forgot to cry. When a grip lost his father midway through the shoot, Robin sat with him after hours, just being there, offering what little peace he could. He made the set feel less like a machine and more like a family. And in Hollywood, that was nothing short of revolutionary. For Sally, watching him in those quiet moments revealed his greatest gift. Not the voices, not the improvisation, not even the boundless humor. His real genius was making others feel seen. In a world full of people desperate to be noticed, Robin was the one who noticed everyone else first. And decades later, that gift still resonates, both in their hearts and on screen. Every laugh masked a story, every joke carried a truth. On screen, Sally Field and Robin Williams became a fractured couple, clinging to the fragile pieces of their family. But what no one realized at first was just how much their dynamic off-screen mirrored the very roles they inhabited. Robin was chaos, pure and unfiltered, a hurricane of voices, ideas, and unexpected brilliance. Sally was calm, deliberate, the grounding force that gave his wild energy something to push against. Together, they embodied what the film itself was trying to say, that love can survive even in the wreckage of brokenness, that humor can coexist with pain. Director Chris Columbus quickly realized he couldn't possibly control Robin's genius, so he didn't. He let the cameras roll long after the scripted lines ended, capturing every improvised moment as it spilled out. Those spontaneous outbursts of humor became the heartbeat of Mrs. Doubtfire. But it was Sally's unwavering presence that gave the movie its soul. While Robin danced on the edge of madness, Sally anchored him. Her stillness allowed his electricity to shine without burning out. Their scenes together became something more than performance, they became a kind of dance. Robin would push the boundaries, spin into chaos, then suddenly snap back when he felt her steady gaze. Sally didn't try to compete with him, didn't try to match his intensity. Instead, she met him with quiet strength, creating an emotional counterweight that made every scene resonate. That unspoken rhythm between them, his brilliance met by her steadiness, transformed what could have been a simple comedy into something timeless. It was this partnership, more than anything, that made Mrs. Doubtfire endure. Comedy was fused with raw emotion, every laugh underscored by something real, something human. Watching them together, you couldn't help but feel that their connection ran deeper than the cameras could capture, because it did. But their connection didn't end when the cameras stopped rolling. Even in Hollywood's glare, theirs was a bond untouched by fame. When the cameras finally stopped rolling and the lights dimmed, Robin Williams and Sally Field quietly stepped out of the roles that had brought them together. But what remained between them was something rare, a friendship that transcended the set. Untouched by the politics and pretense of Hollywood, they didn't need to see each other every day, didn't need to plaster their bond across headlines. Instead, they built it quietly through phone calls that came at just the right time, through small, honest conversations exchanged at noisy industry events where everyone else was putting on a show. Whenever they found themselves in the same room, it was as if no time had passed, and their connection was still intact, still rooted in the trust that had been forged during those long days on Mrs. Doubtfire. Their bond was not about nostalgia or shared success. It was deeper than that. It was about the respect they had earned from each other and the trust that neither would ever betray what they knew about the other. For Sally, that trust was a lifeline in a world that so often stripped away dignity. She once said that the most memorable moment of her time with Robin wasn't something caught on film. It wasn't a scene or a laugh or even a line of dialogue. It was that quiet, defiant moment when he stopped everything, when he saw through her brave face, halted the relentless machinery of production, and put her grief above everything else. That single act of kindness spoke more about who he was than all his brilliant performances combined. Because Robin Williams was never just a comic genius. Behind the voices, the energy, and the endless improvisation was a man of profound empathy and love. A man who gave himself completely to others even when it cost him everything. And in Sally's memory, and in the memories of everyone he touched, that was the Robin they chose to remember, not simply the entertainer, but the friend, the protector. The quiet hero who stood up when it mattered most. And so, even decades after Mrs. Doubtfire, the world still feels Robin's magic, not just in his unforgettable performances, but in the quiet kindness that defined him when no one was watching. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and we will see you in the next one.